Hi, and welcome to Math with Mastery Academic. So today, this video is going to be for anybody who's maybe interested in enrolling in a class, but you want to see how they're set up, or if you're already enrolled in the class and you're not quite sure what you should be doing every day, this video is also for you. So the first thing I'm going to point out is this is a video with materials from the pre-algebra class. So if you're in another level of math, the setup is the same. There might be slight differences. There's certain materials that are only available in pre-algebra that won't be available in other levels, but for the most part, they're all the same. This is what you will see when you first log into Canvas. So when you enroll in the course, you'll get an invitation to Canvas. The students will have this view. Parents will get a separate account login that is an observer account. So the abilities that you have as an observer are a little bit different than students. So you won't be able to complete assignments or submit anything, but you will still have access to all the same material. You'll be able to see your students' grades. You'll be able to see their progress, things like that. You may need to open the welcome module. So if it's closed, you're just going to click on it and that will display all of the files, and then click on Welcome to Pre-Algebra or Welcome to Algebra 1, whatever level you're on. And so in this page, it talks about all of the different materials that you may or may not need for the course. You're going to need the textbook. I have a printable suggested schedule for this class. And then you're going to need a means of taking notes somehow. And some students prefer to use worksheets rather than doing the problems in the book, or they just want another set of problems that they can complete. And so those will be available in this page. So this is going to contain all of the different materials you might need. You'll also need to register for a free account over at Edpuzzle, and that's going to let you see the videos for each lesson. And I'm going to show you one of those videos in just a minute. You'll also see that there's an image of the suggested schedule for pre-algebra or whatever level you're in at the bottom of this page, and that's for the whole course. It's going to have a breakdown of what lessons should be completed each day, when quizzes are due, and sometimes you're going to have other activities that will help reinforce the concepts that your student is learning. And those are like concept activities or focus on algebra, technology activities, and graphing calculator activities further on in higher levels. This will help lay out your week for you. This is just a suggestion, and it'll get you through the class in 30-something weeks. All 4 levels are paced a little bit differently. I based the length of the course on the material and making it a good pace for students so that they didn't feel overwhelmed, but they also weren't bored along the way. So all the classes are a little bit different in length, but they're pretty similar. They're in the 30 to 36 week range. As you work through, you can contact me if you have any questions through the Canvas mail system. That's the note here at the bottom. That's this inbox right over here. Now, I can't access it in the view that I have right now, the student view, but you'll be able to click on that and it looks just like an email layout, and you can send a message to me if you have a question. And I'm usually pretty quick at getting back to students and parents. Now it's going to be time to go ahead and get started on your assignments. So as you scroll down, you can go to Next. This will take you to the course schedule that you can print. And then you can also go through the note-taking guide. Now, this is something specific for pre-algebra. The other levels don't have a printable note-taking guide. I think you can purchase it for most of the levels. I really suggest, especially for the pre-algebra level, that you use this scaffolding to help your student learn how to take notes. In the elementary years, most students have work texts where they read the material and they write the answers right in the same book. And now you're going to have a separate textbook and then your own notebook. So you can just use a spiral bound notebook if that works for you and your student is confident in the ability to take notes. They're probably going to need help with that skill in the beginning just because it's a new skill to learn. If you use this note-taking guide, it kind of guides them on what things are important, what kind of things they should be writing down and focusing on, and it gives them a couple extra problems to do as they go through each section. So I highly recommend note-taking of some sort. The note-taking guide's a really good way to introduce students to taking notes for a math class. And then after that, we get to the worksheets. Now the worksheets are set up. There's one worksheet per section, and it just provides extra problems for every section. There are problems for that section in the textbook, and your student can complete those for practice, or they can use a worksheet like this to go through and do practice problems as well. So it gives them an extra way to practice those skills they're learning. Now the answers for the homework sheets for all 4 levels are available in a module that's only available for observer accounts. So it's really important that you accept that observer account request when you sign up for the class, because it will allow you to get materials like answer keys for some of the things that aren't graded, but it will be helpful for your student to know if they're doing things correctly or not. And then I have directions in here on how to work through a lesson. So in order to mark a lesson complete, which is how you're going to open up the next lesson, you're going to first navigate to the lesson, and this is going to walk you through exactly how to do that. This will tell you everything that I'm telling you in the video, but in a compact written form. So if you have questions after the video, you don't necessarily have to rewatch this video again. You can go to this page and it will tell you exactly what you need to know. So the first thing to do is open up the first lesson. So the first lesson here in pre-algebra is expressions and variables, and it's 1.1. Now we will pretty much do every section in the book. When you get to a lesson page, you're going to see this, and you have a to-do list to complete before you move on. So the first thing your students should do is read through the section in the textbook and take notes while they're doing it. Understand they're going to have questions. There's going to be things they don't understand, because most people can't learn just from a textbook. It's more, I want them to be familiar with it before they watch the video so that it's not brand new when they see the video. The next step they'll do is watching the video for that lesson. After they've watched the video and they work through the examples and rewatch the video to find parts where they maybe didn't quite understand things and they needed to see it again, then they can go ahead and do practice. Practice is either there's an assignment online they can complete that has all kinds of practice problems. They can do problems out of the book, or they can do problems on those worksheets. Now the problems in the book, most of the odd problems are in the back, so I would recommend they do maybe all the odds or every other odd for a section and check those answers. Make sure that they're getting them right, because just because they feel confident that they understood it doesn't mean that they're actually getting the right answers. So they need to get in the habit of checking those answers and making sure they're correct. If they're doing the worksheet, like I said, the answer keys for those are available to parents, so you can print them out or just bring them up on the computer when your student's ready to check their work. And then the online practice is automatically graded, so they'll be able to see right away if they did a question right or wrong. And the variables change in the practice. So every time you log into the practice, it's slightly different. So if a student needs extra help, they can access that practice assignment multiple times and get multiple versions of that assignment to be able to practice those skills. And the grade of the practice does not count. So if they choose to do book problems or worksheet problems, they're not going to be penalized in their grades for not completing the practice for every section. And actually, I would really suggest that students work through a combination of online and physical problems, because while they're going to be doing the work on paper, even for the online problems, it's good for them to see and get in the habit of working through problems on paper for math, just because the connections that are made when you're writing things out stick a lot better than just doing things online. So then once your student has completed practice for a section and they feel confident and they understand what they're doing, they're going to need to complete the quick check for that section. Now this is a graded assignment. It's 3 to 5 questions. It shouldn't take long, 10, 15 minutes tops. If it's taking longer than that, then they probably didn't understand the section as well as they thought they did, and they probably need to go back and relearn the material from that section. Now the quick check, you only get one opportunity to take, so I really recommend students don't take it until they feel ready. The other assignments in the chapter, they will have multiple opportunities to take it. The quizzes they can take twice, and the tests they can take twice. For the quick checks, make sure that they feel ready before they try them. And you may need to work with them for the first week or two until they get used to knowing when to do things and when to practice some more. After you've done all that, completed your quick check, you can move on to the next lesson, which is 1.2. Now for the lesson, there's material on the bottom half of this page that is a combination of things from the book and things that I find are really helpful for students to understand about this section. So places where I know students make errors, common issues students have, things that they really need to remember. Everything here they need to at least read, but they probably actually want to copy it into their notebook. And then at the bottom is a list of problems to complete in the book. So for right now, all students are at the regular level. And so for the regular level, it tells them what page numbers and which exercises to complete to help them focus their problem solving. They will never go wrong by doing all of the odds, but if you don't want to do all of the odds in a section, like here you can see there's 67 problems, they may not want to do every odd, that may be too much, then you could have them focus by doing these problems. And then for pre-algebra, there's a daily puzzler at the bottom of every page. If your child likes challenges, word problems, these are really good to get them thinking as math students. These types of problems, I would recommend they read them, try to answer them, and then they can click through and they'll be able to see the answer. So they can check and see if they got the answer correct. And then eventually there will be extra examples worked through in videos, and I'm going to link those at the bottom of the page. So back to the video. When you're logged into Edpuzzle, you'll be able to see the videos right in the page. It'll recognize that you're logged in. You can start the assignment right in the page. If you're not logged in, it will prompt you to log in on the page. And then once you've logged in, you'll be able to see everything. So when you're ready, you can start a video. Now students can't fast forward and they can't skip parts the first time through. Once they've watched the video, then they'll be able to skip around and rewatch parts. So if they're stuck on a specific part, they will be able to go back and re-see that segment. So the first thing they'll do is press play.
Welcome to Pre-Algebra Lesson 1.
And you'll be able to watch the video. So I'm going to let this play for the first section, and then we'll get to a question and I will explain more there.
1. Variables, expressions, and integers. I'm Mrs. Laria, and I'm going to be teaching you all kinds of math wisdom in these videos. And in order for me to do that, I need you to follow my directions. So the very first direction I have for you is, coming up in just a moment, the video is going to pause and you're going to do a skill check, which is a good way to make sure that you have the base skills necessary to be successful in this section. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions and you'll go ahead and answer those right in the video, and then you'll be able to see the answers right away. So this isn't graded, but I want you to give it your best shot and see how you do. If you really struggle with these questions at the beginning of the videos, the skill checks, that means that maybe you're missing something from an earlier math or an earlier lesson that you probably need to go back and refresh yourself on. So for now, I want you to go ahead and try the skill check, and then when you get back, we'll go through some vocabulary.
So when they get to the skill check, this is what they're going to see. The video will pause on its own and there will be questions. So when students get to this, they're going to attempt to answer. Now this part is not graded. This is for them. This is to see if they understand what they're supposed to do. So for A, we have 16 plus 8. So when you add that, you get 24. And then for B, we have 13 times 4. So they'll do all of these 4 math problems. And then when they're ready to check, they will submit. So once they've written them in, it will expose what all the answers are. So the answers are 24, 52, 15, and 16. So they can check their own work and see if that makes sense. If they got some of the questions wrong, it's probably a good idea for them to go back and see if they can figure out what they did. If they made a silly error, it's probably okay to continue. If there's something they're not understanding, they may need to go back and rewatch the section. So the option here is to go back and rewatch that segment. So from question to question, the video is broken down into segments. Different videos will have different numbers of checks throughout. So this video only happens to have 2. Some of them will have 5 or 6 where they need to stop and practice what they've just learned. So if they've gotten all the answers correct and they're ready to move on, they can click continue and the video will start again.
So now that you've done the skill check, hopefully you feel confident in your preparation for this section. So the skill check had you just do some basic operations. So you're multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting, all those sorts of things. So hopefully you're pretty confident with those. If they still take you a while, it's a good idea to go back and practice those while you take this class. So you don't have to wait to continue in the class.
So I'm pausing the video now because I want you to understand that students can pause the video and rewind it. If they miss something or they have a question, they can always go backwards. They just can't skip forwards. So I've skipped ahead a little bit here, so I'm at the end of the vocabulary section, and I'm gonna show you how I work through a problem and what that looks like.
So the first example we're going to do is evaluating the expression 3 times s when s equals 60, and to find out how many miles Doug drives in 3 hours at a speed of 60 miles an hour. And so one thing we're going to do is rewrite our expression. So if we have the expression 3 times s, and it's going to equal something, but we don't know what it is. Now we can just leave this blank while we do some things, or 3 times s. So if we have 3 times s, one way we can substitute in s is we just write 3 times and then we put 60 in where s was. So we have 3 times 60. 3 times 60 is 108. So in order to figure out how many miles Doug drives in 3 hours at a speed of 60 miles an hour, we substitute in 60 for his speed, s, and we get 3 times 60, which is 108. So that's our answer. Now, one thing I highly recommend as you continue in math and in sciences too, is when you find your final answer, you want to box it or circle. Now, this is helpful for you when you go back to review your work. If your work is written all over a page and then you go back to see what you did, it might be hard to find your answer to check and see if it's correct or check and see what answer you got if there's a whole bunch of work on the page. So if you box your answer or if you circle your answer, it'll be much easier to find that answer when you come back to review your work. Now, another thing I wanted to point out is that when we are writing variable expressions, starting now in pre-algebra, if you notice I used a dot for multiplication. Now you may or may not have seen this before. I highly recommend you don't use the symbol x for multiplication. So early on when we first learned multiplication, you used x to represent it. So you had like 3 times 15. But now I'm going to ask you to write it as 3.15 for times. Okay, so 3 times 15 written this way is going to make it a lot easier to tell what's a variable and what's multiplication when we start to use the variable x. So if I had written 3 times x, and I tried to use it with the x for the multiplication, I'd have 3xx, right? So that gets kind of confusing. Sometimes you're not going to be able to tell, is that a multiplication? Is that the variable x? What am I doing? I have no idea. So in order to avoid that confusion, don't use x for your multiplication symbol. Use the dot. Okay, so moving on to example 2. So example 2.
So once you've finished watching the entire video and you've done the practice and you feel like you're ready, you can go ahead and go to the quick check. Now, when you go into the quick check, it's going to show that it's locked if you haven't marked the lesson done. So you have to go back and mark it as done up at the top, and then you can either do next down here or you can click on quick check, and that will take you to the quick check. Now, a student can open this page without anything happening. Once they hit attempt quiz now, they're only going to get that one chance to do it. Once the student is ready, they can go ahead and attempt quiz now. So I'm going to kind of let the cat out of the bag and show you what quick check 1.1 looks like. This is the types of questions they're going to have. So the questions are going to ask them to evaluating the expression, writing a variable expression to represent the amount, and most of the time there's a challenge question as well, which is a little bit tougher, but it kind of cements those ideas that they've just learned in the lesson in this quick check. So once they've done that, they'll be able to submit it and they'll be done with that lesson. They can move on to the next one. Now, a few notes about this. This is actually a different software than Canvas. It is a smart software. It uses a computer to figure out if the student's answer is equivalent mathematically. That said, it's also programmed by a human, me, and so sometimes I don't foresee a way a student could write an answer correctly, but differently. So sometimes your student might have something marked incorrect that is correct. It's just written in a different way that I didn't think about. And if that's the case, please shoot me a message. I try to adjust answers so that it will be inclusive of all correct, mathematically correct answers. And so I would love to know if your student is getting something wrong and you feel that it's correct, they or you can shoot me a message and I will look into it. If it is mathematically wrong, then it's wrong. If it was correct and I just didn't have it programmed to recognize that, then I will go in and adjust that, because as we go along, I want to make these where students can practice and not be marked wrong for something that's just written a little differently. So when they go to write their answer, they can, so something like this, A equals 1 and C equals 5, so 1 plus 5 is 6. They'll also have access to an editor, so if they need to put things in different formats, like with exponents, there's a little arrow here if there's supposed to be subscripts. I don't think you'll have anything like that. If they're supposed to be in parentheses or they need an operation, things like that, they can go ahead and write in that. It also has the option, if your student is using this on a tablet, they can use their finger or their mouse to go into handwritten mode and they can write out what their answer is. So say x plus 6. So obviously that is not the right answer. In the bottom right-hand corner, it will show them what the computer is seeing from what they've written. So sometimes, depending on how you write and how neat you are, the computer may recognize it as something different than what you're trying to write. And so you may need to go back, in which case you can either use the trash if you just want to start all over, or you can just go backwards if you just need to make an edit. And then you can use the keyboard button to go back to just typing in your answer. So when you submit things, it will tell you right away if you're getting things correct. You can do finish attempt. Now, if you notice, it tells you right away 1 and 2 were answered and 3 was not yet answered. So if you notice that there's something that wasn't answered, make sure you return to the attempt and answer all questions, because you can't get a question right if you don't attempt it, and then submit and finish. So if I submit it, it'll tell me I can't do this again, so I need to make sure that I'm correct, submit all and finish, and then it will tell me right away if my answer was correct or incorrect. This will tell me what my score is, how long it took. This is all things parents will be able to see. So if your student got a 1 out of 6 and they only spent 30 seconds on an assignment, you can tell that they are shotgunning it and maybe they need a little more oversight to make sure that they're trying on an assignment. If, on the other hand, they took 45 minutes to do something that should take 10, maybe they need more practice before they get to that assignment. So this is the layout of the quick checks. The quizzes and tests are very similar, except for the quizzes and tests are longer. Obviously, the quizzes are more like 10 to 15 questions usually, and the tests are 20 to 30 questions, depending. It also tells you what the correct answers are, so the students can learn from their mistakes, and they'll be able to see what they did wrong, hopefully. So once they've done finish review, they can see their grade. They submitted it on a certain day. Now, if you want to see their grades overall, you can go into grades and see, so this student has not taken anything, right? This is a pretend student. The only thing they've taken so far is the quick check. They got a 1 out of 6. All the rest is blank, and it's arranged by, there aren't any due dates actually because this is self-paced, but You can do it by assignment group. So if you want to see all the exams together, all the practices together, all the quick checks together, you can do that. You can also group it by module, so all the chapter 1 stuff would be together, all the chapter 2 stuff would be together, or by title, so that's just kind of alphabetical. So module is probably the way you'll want to do it because it'll order it in the way that the assignments come along. So all the things that are graded are in the modules, so that's the only things you'll see. You won't see the practice assignments in the grades if you arrange by module because the practices aren't required, so I did not put them in the module. Now, the student needs to take the quick check and submit it before they'll be able to move on to the next assignment. So now that I've submitted it, 1.2 has opened up and I can enter that, learn all the stuff from 1.2 and move on. And then every few sections you'll see there's a quiz, there's some concept activities, things like that. So the students can see what's coming, but they won't actually be able to click on anything until they've completed it in order. And then parents, you'll be able to see the answer keys for the various assignments. So I posted it for the student handbook, the student resource handbook, which covers some materials from previous classes that students should have. And it's also got the worksheets answer key in there too. So if your student is using the worksheets for their practice, they can check their answers. So that is how you complete modules. And so as you go through, there is at the end of each chapter, there's a chapter review that has a vocabulary Quizlet. So they can play like matching games and things like that to practice the vocabulary. The vocabulary isn't directly tested on the exam, so there won't be questions like, what is the definition of this? But if they don't have a good grasp of the vocabulary, they're probably going to make mistakes on the exam because they need to know what the different terms mean. So I do recommend the Quizlet. Take that and practice those words. And then it also has the answers to the chapter review in the book, the chapter test at the end of each chapter in the book. And then when they are ready, there's an online exam that's set up just like that quick check was, where they can see what they've learned from this chapter. That is how you would complete a chapter. Once they're done with that chapter, then the second chapter will show up and they'll be able to continue on. This is how you will be able to see what your students are doing and how they are learning. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to contact me.